The evolution of artificial intelligence is exactly the same as the evolution of personal computers. At first, they're available to governments for defense, scientific, and other purposes. Then they're available to companies, and finally, to individuals.
A system that was originally created to be decentralized for people was taken over by corporations.
My life experience, those 10,000 hours spent on something, made me an expert. If I digitize it, I can sell it as a subscription.
And at Alpha, we should take this approach, create roles that are filled with specific functions or specialized knowledge.
Personalization of artificial intelligence will lead to explosive growth, increased capitalization, and significant profits.
I see this as a unique opportunity to help free up valuable time for a large number of people. And I truly believe that this extra freed up time can then be thoughtfully directed toward the process of creating things that people are genuinely and truly interested in.
Dear friends, welcome. My name is Ognev, Alexei, CEO of the DigiU ecosystem. Today our guest is Alexei Ponyatov, the head of the innovative Alpha.U division, the very person we've seen and heard from multiple times in our previous videos. Let me remind you, one of the most well-known is the video that predicts artificial intelligence will replace all of us. And back then, together with Alexei, we were developing this very idea which you might have seen in that video. One of the main fears is that artificial intelligence will take the place of you, that you'll become unnecessary. Unnecessary at work, unnecessary in general, maybe in your family or somewhere else. We suggested looking at this differently and considering an alternative that artificial intelligence could be an ally, someone who gives you new opportunities, offers some prospects, and takes care of you. And overall, we can now see that to some extent, this is exactly how things are developing. Naturally, throughout this whole process of development, there will be many painful stories. Stories about professions disappearing, about certain fields of activity that you may have studied for a long time, also gradually fading away, because everything is being automated, everything is being replaced, and so on. But for everyone, there is an opportunity to integrate artificial intelligence into your life and accomplish this integration in such a way that it becomes your ally, but not just an abstract ally that exists around you and does something, but your personal ally. But this is, so to speak, a mutual process. You need to take a thoughtful and responsible approach to creating your personal ally, making sure to approach this process carefully in such a way that you understand why you are doing it. And so Alpha.U, and in general, the various products of the DigiU ecosystem are specifically aimed at inspiring and motivating audiences and individuals all around the world with this idea, encouraging them to think about it. And perhaps after reflecting on it, some of those individuals will begin to purposefully create their own personal ally, the intelligence of their personal assistant, their personal digital identity, their personal digital self. Immortality. Essentially, I have just listed several stages of development. And now we are obviously not at the zero stage, not at the starting stage, but already at a point, a foundation from which we can confidently move forward. Right now, I'm talking about the DigiU ecosystem. And the purpose of this meeting is to talk with Alexei as the head of the department, as someone who is deeply involved in this field, who is an expert in LLM models, in interacting with them, in multi-agent systems, and who shares our outlook on life. Overall, we spend a lot of time in such work-related interactions. So let's try in this meeting to have a conversation with Alexei. Let's reflect on this topic. What does the VIP of this digital persona actually look like, and where does it truly begin in its journey? Alpha.U. What approaches are we choosing? What approaches are we encountering in general? Because obviously there are a lot of them. There is a lot to study on the market, but one way or another, you have to place your bets on something. So let's try to thoroughly cover this topic, discuss it in some detail, and probably talk about some relevant cases. Because at the very least, it's genuinely fascinating. At the very least, that's clear. And somewhere it might be difficult, but we'll talk about it. This is more of a working meeting, so to speak. In general, that's pretty much how they go. Yes, we usually talk in this kind of format. So let's get started. Alexei, so overall, yes, I've given some introductory information, and now, obviously, a lot of time is devoted to creating the product, the concept, and everything is done gradually, but with quality. What could you share with us?
Yes, Alexei, thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm glad to be at this meeting today. Indeed, that was a comprehensive introduction to what I do and the direction our company as a whole is taking in developing the product. There's a lot to say and discuss on this whole topic. Probably overall, what I'd like to talk about are the various challenges and obstacles we face, the different behaviors and experiences of ordinary people who are using artificial intelligence in their everyday lives, how it manifests itself in the world today, how people interact with it in a variety of ways, and what trends we are currently seeing emerge. And based on these observable trends, how we plan to further develop and improve the product, as well as what form it might eventually take for users in the future.
Where shall we start?
Well, let's probably start by talking a bit more about how people in general are currently using artificial intelligence today, what kinds of challenges and difficulties they're facing, and what we see as the likely next steps. And in your view, what does this ongoing evolution of how ordinary people use artificial intelligence actually look like? For many, their first encounter was with GPT. It was kind of an empty window, a blank slate. A person would find themselves there, and then the question would arise, what am I supposed to do here? Maybe in part, they even thought it was a bit like Instagram when it first came onto the scene, where you could post photos and write some captions. For example, at first, people posted pictures of food, then something else. In other words, they were trying to figure out the right approach, and only later did it become clear what could be done with it. You could build a business, develop your personal brand, and so on. But that took time. The same thing is happening right now in the field of artificial intelligence. Something very similar is currently going on. And usually, at the very first stage, a person simply tries to solve their everyday, routine problems, not by asking their relatives or friends for help, but instead by using tools like GPT, DeepSeq, or Groji, or perhaps something else depending on what the person happens to come across in their search. It could even be some kind of helpful bot in Telegram or another online service depending on what is available or convenient at the moment. But quite often, people stop at this level and never learn about the possibilities that all these systems can offer. And essentially, that's a problem. Why? Because people end up devaluing it. They feel like, what can I get here? There's not much value for me. And they leave. They stop exploring this field altogether. And this is exactly the problem we also encounter. People often come and try, for example, to take a few photos, maybe write a few short messages in the alpha chat, and then they might just stop there. And after that, no further development or progress actually happens, and nothing else really continues beyond that point.
Well, this is the well-known and often discussed blank page problem, which happens when you have to. It seems like everything is going well in your life, and then some interesting new thing appears. There's a lot of buzz about it in the news, and it really seems like you should get involved and do something there. But in order to do that, I still need to learn. I still need to figure out how to use it. And this is exactly where a significant opportunity opens up, which, as we have mentioned and discussed from time to time, is important because those individuals who manage to overcome this particular barrier really begin to accelerate their progress. So this is what we refer to as that quantum leap, this kind of powerful and transformative tool for, wait, so now I can actually analyze something in detail and draw deep, meaningful conclusions in just a minute or so? I don't need to bring in teams for that or anything else like that. So you speed up once, you speed up twice, and the business accelerates. But for an ordinary person, it's probably a bit difficult, although probably there isn't really any simpler interface than a chat interface. Just write, ask, and the universal mind will answer you. But still, the problem absolutely hasn't gone anywhere. And in Alpha, we really see this happening. And we understand this, we expect it. So what's next?
Next, I'd like to discuss in detail a certain distinction that we decided to build into Alpha right from the very beginning. That is, we knew we would encounter this problem and decided to take the approach of using certain roles. What does that mean? For example, you have an address book and you know that this person is a lawyer, this one deals with finances, and this one is a car specialist. For you, these are the roles these people play. You can call this person and resolve your issue in that particular area. We decided that in Alpha as well, after careful consideration, we should take the same thoughtful approach and create roles that are specifically filled with particular functionality or highly specialized knowledge in that field. And for a person, this will already immediately help them clearly understand what they can get here and what value they can gain. So probably up until now we were at this stage, but at the same time we were exploring and asking ourselves, what's next? What solutions already exist on the market? What are the next steps in this ongoing evolution, both in terms of future product development and the overall user experience? What are people already using? What are other companies creating? That's also a very interesting and important point, and I think we'll definitely talk about it in more detail today as well.
There is this approach of dividing into specific roles, and obviously it's quite interesting to us as a company because within the team and within the broader ecosystem, there are different teams, there are various projects, and for the most part, these roles tend to emerge naturally over time. They come from some of our internal needs. We realize that we need to optimize teamwork. We need to lighten the load for specialists. We need to provide them with some kind of project management system. Why not do this at the agent level? Makes sense. It's clear. We tested it on ourselves. We try to take it somewhere further. To the market or to give it to the community and so on. A project with cryptocurrency analytics was born because we were deeply interested in it. And internally, it gave us some interesting things. Alpha U as a whole was created because we were exploring this area. And you're absolutely right. There are a lot of things on the market. We spend a lot of time researching this. So just so we don't reveal any commercial secrets, let's try to conceptually describe what the product is now, how you see it at this moment.
To answer your question, I'll first touch on the term agent. You just mentioned it. Maybe not everyone understands what that means. They also call Nikitas and agents that sometimes. Speaking about the first stage, what a person encounters when interacting with artificial intelligence, I mentioned models and products such as GPT and Grok, which people can use and which look like a certain mode, a chat mode. And in this chat, essentially, a person uses a certain model that has been trained on specific information, a kind of large library. Based on this information, it can give you answers to your questions. An agent is already a somewhat more complex system. There, it is not just a library, there is also a preloaded instruction, which is also known as a prompt. This prompt is provided in advance, and it is based on this instruction that the agent is able to generate its response. There are also some additional settings or special features, for example, internet access or access to your calendar, for instance, in order to perform certain specific tasks or functions, such as scheduling events or managing online connectivity, let's say specific functions. You mentioned the topic of cryptocurrency, and in essence, when creating this agent, we gave it access to various specialized analytical systems that aren't publicly available. By relying on these, this agent would provide some special, valuable, and unique content that you could use in your, let's say, investment-related decisions. And now we understand that overall, the market is largely focused on creating different agents. There are a lot of different products that create various agents. And essentially, the roles we talked about in Alpha are also a kind of agents. But that's just one of the intermediate steps, I would say. And the next step we're looking at now is creating such a multi-agent system or a kind of platform. This platform integrates a variety of different agents, which may be within the same domain, for example, finance, or even from completely different domains, but are interconnected and can, for instance, give you the ability to access the functionality of various agents all in one convenient place. And for you as a user, that's especially convenient. You don't need to go to different services and register separately or use different applications. You can get valuable opportunities in various areas of your interests all in one place, so to speak.
I'm listening to you, and I'm really trying, so to speak, to put myself in the shoes of someone who knows absolutely nothing, or maybe just barely understands a little bit. A person who basically knows nothing would probably ask you right now. I'm commenting on what you just said. Telegram is full of all sorts of bots with a bunch of neural networks that have names I don't even recognize. I still don't know what to do there. How can I possibly get what I really need if I don't even truly know what it is that I need? If that's the case, it's like go somewhere not knowing where, bring something not knowing what. Well, to answer your question, it's true that a significant and actually quite important stage in using these agents is this one. There's a term called onboarding. It's when, for example, you install an app and the app asks you for some information about yourself. It might be a few questions about your previous experience. And based on that experience, the app offers you some solutions. And we see that in our comprehensive digital identity solution that we're currently creating. This particular process is considered to be one of the key and most important stages. Because in our specific case, this onboarding process involves collecting a certain amount of detailed information about the user, about the client, based on which we will be able to make personalized suggestions to them. These will be actions and recommendations that make sense to them. In other words, a clear and tangible value that they can get from our product, Alpha. So, roughly speaking, in your opinion, how could all of this potentially look on a global scale, taking into account different regions and contexts? For example, a person visits the website. And what happens next? What does he do, for instance? What does he receive? So, in the end, so that I can picture it, and for example, when does he get it? How many surveys does he need to complete? How much information does he need to upload about himself? Are there any more specifics, just a bit more detail, so it's
clear? We can start with a visual image to help illustrate the concept. For example, imagine that you log into Alpha, and in this scenario, we're specifically talking about a digital identity. That's our idea, our concept. And probably a digital identity, some kind of copy of a digital identity. Yours implies that it can resemble you. That's why one of the very first steps will be a detailed and full-fledged creation of your high-quality digital avatar, which will be of perfect quality, just like you are in real life, and will later interact. At first, it will interact with you within this app, and then, for example, it will be able to participate in a variety of meetings, such as video calls, whether they are work-related or maybe personal ones, or communicate on your behalf on social networks, record voice messages in Telegram. This is one of the features that may become available later. But creating an avatar is a very simple function. This technology has been around for more than a few years already. And you'll be able to access it right from the very beginning, from the very start of your experience. After that, for example, by interacting with you in dialogue mode, you can share some general areas where you have certain goals, objectives, or aspirations. Or you might mention some tasks or activities that in the future your digital persona will be able to take on and handle for you. And after that, there is a more detailed and thorough exploration of the topics and subjects you've identified, allowing for a deeper understanding and more comprehensive discussion of your interests and needs. This could be direct surveys, or it could be in a gamified format where, for example, as you play a game, you provide some information about yourself. It could involve your, let's say, already digital personas copy, for example, participating in meetings or even providing it with access to certain services you use, so that by collecting information there, for example, over a week or several weeks, or it might even take several months, or perhaps over a period of time, it can later offer and provide you with a service, such as giving you, for instance, a salesperson. For example, you are engaged in some kind of sales or consulting, and your copy, so to speak, will be able to accompany the client for you from, say, the very first contact when someone sends you a smiley face on Instagram or your social networks on Facebook, all the way to the moment of purchase. And your task, for instance, would only be to switch to personal communication with the person after the purchase has been completed. If you set such a specific task for your digital persona, then it will be able to handle this for you. Or, for example, participation in work meetings where you usually took part and it was necessary to, for instance, resolve some operational issues or address certain questions, then here you can allow your digital persona to do this for you, and it will be able to manage these responsibilities on your behalf. For example, the system could either simply report back to you and tell you exactly what decisions were made, or it could confirm some of the most important key issues for you. And this is something that could realistically become a part of our daily lives in the near future. I think that in a year or two, we will all be living in this new reality together.
Well, as you're talking now, it really got me thinking, and I started to reflect on how in our company, for example, there are about 50 employees in total. I guess I've seen maybe half of them in person, face to face, and the others, well, the other part is in different countries, and we either haven't met yet or but our interactions are constantly happening in chats, constantly happening via video conferences where we connect virtually and collaborate together, even though we might be far apart physically. Let's imagine that. Does it really matter to me personally who I actually see on camera if this particular thing is truly accomplishing all of the tasks that we specifically hired it for? And does it really matter if it manages to do it entirely on its own or if it completes the work with the help or assistance of a person? This is actually a very interesting and thought-provoking case. While I was listening to you, I realized that on a global scale, there are as many use cases for digital identity as there are people who will use it. Because when we talk about identity, we're all different, each of us unique in our own way. There are things that interest us and things that don't. Some people need a digital identity to develop a character trait they lack. I can give a simple example. I've always wanted to run a blog, but I don't have enough time for it. A digital identity, for instance, could run a blog for me. I've always wanted to see myself from the outside, as an expert in a field where I haven't yet become an expert. That's interesting. So what will happen at the user interface level? Let's imagine there's a website, which is also an app, and it's multi-platform. A person comes in and an onboarding process starts, which includes, let's say, taking tests and so on. This is a regular process. The user takes one test, then another a week later, and a third one another week after that, and so on. As a result, in the first version, they get a certain set of agents that they can deploy somewhere. For example, connect them to a messenger or a video conference. That's exactly what I'd like to know more about.
Going back a few steps in our discussion when we previously talked about what people actually use and what kinds of entities exist in the world of artificial intelligence, we specifically mentioned that there are foundational models that everything is initially built on, and there are also agents. Some of these agents are created by us, the developers or designers, and some are created by the broader market or ecosystem. We understand that in our interface, specifically in the digital identity, we need to combine agents from both sides, those created by us and those created by the market, in order to give people the maximum possible possibilities and benefits. After a person completes the onboarding stage, which is the initial process of getting started, they will initially be presented with several different options to choose from. Whether these will appear to the user as agents or as something else entirely is still an open question that we are considering. Our listeners who are following along with this discussion can actually suggest their own ideas and thoughts here. The person will see and understand that they can now choose specific solutions from several available options. At the same time, they will clearly understand the value that each solution offers to them. For example, Content could be managed for them automatically, or their digital identity could attend meetings on their behalf, saving them time and effort. Perhaps their digital identity, as an expert entity that has been assembled through studying the person's behavior, preferences, and expertise, could even be sold by subscription to others who might benefit from it. This opens up a wide range of possibilities for how digital identities and agents can be used in the future, and we are excited to see how this develops. That's very interesting indeed. Other companies could potentially make use of this specialized expertise in such a form. This is one of the innovative solutions that could soon become a reality. A certain world will be created with its own unique ecosystem of different identities and agents who may at some point start living their own lives independently in their own world.
This is a very interesting and thought-provoking topic that I genuinely believe is worth discussing in detail. So we've just heard one of the monetization cases, which to be honest was quite unexpected and surprising. Let's imagine for a moment that I am an expert in a certain field, for example, a highly qualified lawyer specializing in a specific legal area, a chief financial officer with years of experience, a project management expert who has overseen numerous projects, or any other specialist with a deep understanding of their profession. That is, I consciously make the decision to digitize myself, fully understanding that I have accumulated a wealth of life experience. I have spent 10,000 hours or more doing a certain job, and that extensive practice has made me an expert in this field. If I choose to digitize this expertise, the question arises, can I actually sell it by subscription to interested parties? I think this is a particularly interesting and innovative model that has now caught the attention of many of our listeners. It really is fascinating because for many people this is not an obvious or immediately apparent opportunity. So, if we've moved on to discussing business models, what other potential revenue streams, for example, are possible on this platform or in this kind of aggregator?
First of all, the user who accesses this product will use it via subscription because some solutions will be provided by us and some solutions we will connect to our product in a special way. All of this will be bundled into a certain price. In other words, we will have our own added value to this product. The user will pay for this by subscription. This is what makes up the cost for the average person. If we look at this as a business, we provide platforms that create their own agents or even multi-agent systems with traffic. That is, users who have already gone through onboarding and are interested in using such solutions. Essentially, we can sell these solutions to the relevant platforms.
Selling the opportunity for placement is a process that involves offering a chance for companies or individuals to have their products, services, or solutions featured in a prominent position. If they meet, for example, certain specific and well-defined criteria for placement, such as successfully passing a comprehensive security audit or fulfilling other important requirements, then they become eligible for consideration. Let's say we manage to do this, and if they meet all the necessary requirements, then there will be some competition among the eligible participants for their solution to be ranked higher in the placement hierarchy. Obviously, regional presence is extremely important here as it can significantly influence the outcome. Some agents or representatives are in high demand in one particular country, while others may be more sought after in another region. You could say this is a clear and transparent model that is easy to understand. I think everyone watching us now understands the essence of what is being discussed. There is a client flow which can include various types of payments, such as subscriptions, one-time payments, and so on. That is, there is a continuous stream of money coming from retail clients, as well as a stream of money from businesses that want to get traffic and certain services. In this way, the idea of monetizing life experience, knowledge, and expertise is very interesting and holds a lot of potential for growth and innovation in the future.
We see that business models are interesting and relevant both from the perspective of ordinary users and from the perspective of businesses. I would expand this statement, even from the perspective of the government, because we are also focused on local solutions, especially for developing markets. So there are many advantages here from a business standpoint, but there are also many questions that still need to be resolved and certain problems. And here is one of the key problems. We have talked a lot about collecting information about users. For us, this is a very important and fundamental initial stage when getting acquainted with the product, when diving into it and understanding its various features and capabilities. Different countries have different regulations regarding the collection of information about people. In some places, only one category of information is available, in others more, in others less. For now, this is an issue we are working on. We are thinking about what solution to choose. Right now, we see two directions for development. In the first case, the collected information is stored in cloud services. This is simpler because it can be done right now and does not require complex infrastructure for data storage at the moment, but it is less secure and it creates a dependency on the platforms where these cloud services are located. The second downside of this solution is that there are more regulatory questions. This concerns the fact that we collect information, provide it somewhere, and it is stored somewhere. In this case, the government immediately has questions. The second direction for development is when the information can be stored at the user's home on their device. You have already talked in previous webinars about the idea of a supercomputer or a computer that will be focused on working with your digital identity.
It's important to note, and I want to emphasize, that this was not a difficult or, at some point, even an obvious decision. If we don't transfer information elsewhere, it's crucial to ensure we can work with it locally, right where it is generated and stored. Teun, this isn't a new story for IT. When you keep your own servers and provide them with the necessary capacity to meet the company's needs, you are following a well-established tradition in information technology. This all relates to what we've discussed many times before in various contexts. The evolution of artificial intelligence, or AI, is much like the evolution of personal computers, or PCs, which we have witnessed over the past decades. At first, these advanced technologies are available only to governments for solving defense, scientific, and other specialized issues. Then, over time, they become available to companies and later to individuals as the technology matures and becomes more accessible. It's essentially the same model, repeating itself in a new technological era. It's worth emphasizing, and I want to stress this, that the personalization of artificial intelligence at both the software and device level gives you as a user the capacity to work with your data without sending it anywhere, no matter who you are, a person or an organization large or small. You store the data yourself and you have the power and responsibility to work with it. You connect LLM models, neural networks, or whatever you want to call them, tailored to your needs. These are agents that work for you, performing tasks and solving problems. In part, this addresses the corresponding issue of data privacy and control. Obviously, this will require certification, compliance with requirements, and possibly certain levels of encryption to ensure security and trust. Of course, I'm speculating here, but my speculations are based on concrete real-world experience. We see the prospects and opportunities that the personalization of artificial intelligence will lead, among other things, to explosive growth in the industry. What's happening now is our preparation for this explosive growth, both as a company and as an ecosystem of partners and users. This will lead to increased capitalization and significant profits for those who are ready. In other words, this is already business, and it is happening right now.
What you just said reminded me of a well-known quote by Berners-Lee. He's the creator of the internet. Just last year, while reflecting on the ongoing evolution of the internet, he said that, unfortunately, the system that was originally designed to be so decentralized, essentially for people, was ultimately taken over by large corporations. The same fate could potentially await artificial intelligence. This is exactly one of the important things we're working on.
I have to admit, at some point during this entire process, I even felt a bit sad, perhaps even a little melancholic. Artificial intelligence, along with these rapidly developing and evolving technologies as a whole, open up truly huge, almost limitless opportunities for influence and impact on our lives and society. This influence, this power, could come from large corporations, which is quite likely, given their resources and reach. But it also gives us, ordinary people, a small yet significant chance to do something meaningful, something that will prevent us from being locked into this rigid, unyielding digital inequality that is emerging. That's why the more conscious, aware, and deliberate we are in our approach to these issues, the greater the chance that whether we find ourselves in opposition to or in partnership with corporations, we can create conditions and circumstances that benefit us all. I urge everyone, all listeners and viewers, to approach this issue thoughtfully, carefully, and not let the situation slip out of our collective control. The more conscious, informed, and responsible consumers and creators of their own digital entities there are, and the stronger, more robust, and resilient our product is in this regard, the higher the likelihood that we will be heard, and that a standard for working with digital identities and everything else related to this field will be implemented. What I just said can be described as the philosophical and value-based part of our conversation, the part that deals with our beliefs and principles. Still today, we're mostly talking about the product itself, its features, and its prospects for the future. You described it very well, very clearly. I just want to emphasize for our audience that there is a kind of digital immortality that we are all, in one way or another, moving toward. There is a digital identity that precedes digital immortality, and there are digital assistants, which we've just discussed as a finished, fully developed product. In addition, there's the stage we're currently at, the present moment in time. This stage comes before the digital assistant, serving as a foundation. Alexei has been talking about this on a global international scale for several minutes now, providing valuable insights and thoughtful commentary. Is there anything else we can add? Any additional thoughts or perspectives to make this conversation even more useful, informative, and valuable for everyone involved?
I'd like to take a moment to talk in detail about how we envision and see our product evolving and developing in the near future, as well as what immediate, concrete steps we plan to take in order to move forward. As you know, we've already discussed our overall vision and strategic direction today. To begin, I'd like to clarify and elaborate on our immediate goal so that our users, stakeholders, and everyone involved can fully understand what to prepare for and what to expect in the coming weeks and months. In particular, our vision is that the MVP, the minimum viable product of the digital identity platform, will consist of the very first version of the processes and features we've outlined and described today. It will be an application, a digital solution with an initial onboarding phase during which some essential information about you, the user, will already be collected and securely stored. Based on this onboarding process, you'll be offered a certain number of agents or functions, which are essentially features or services, through which you'll receive benefits that are valuable, meaningful, and useful to you, and for which you'll be willing to pay. I won't specify the exact number of these agents or functions just yet, as that detail is still being determined and finalized. But our goal, and what we're striving for as a team, is to create and deliver such a solution within the next quarter or two, depending on how things progress. In this case, the speed and pace of development depends on the team's available resources, the expertise of our specialists, ongoing negotiations with various partners, and a number of other important conditions and factors. That's why it's difficult to name or commit to exact deadlines, especially right now, at this stage of the project.
No, we have a very clear and well thought out plan for attracting those very important and necessary resources, including the team, the infrastructure, and quite simply, the essential funding for development. And these are, I won't name exact figures, but they are very significant, substantial, and impressive numbers. That's why, in fact, this is a call and an appeal to our audience, to all of you watching and listening, to participate as much as possible in the very first stage of the bridge round. Right now, it's the end of October, and you're watching this video in early November. We're already about halfway through the first stage, which is a crucial and pivotal moment. By the time you watch this video, we may have already moved into the second half of this important stage. So, make sure you become a co-owner. Take the time to truly understand this process and not just enter the world of consciously creating a digital identity and using these innovative products. Obviously, these products will have some impact on the world, potentially changing the way we interact with technology. But also, make sure you become a co-owner of the ecosystem, which is a unique and valuable opportunity. And these 24 months of the bridge round are the final chapter, the last and ultimate opportunity to become a co-owner of the DigiU ecosystem. There will probably be many more podcasts like this one, because the topic of the product is genuinely interesting and thought-provoking. Sometimes we'll talk about infrastructure, sometimes about uniqueness, and sometimes about other important aspects. Also, we expect to receive the very first sample of a personal computer we purchased from NVIDIA very soon, which is an exciting development. We can't wait to connect it and test these mechanics to see how everything works in practice. All of this is being done so that next year we can order the first small batch of our unique developments, which will be adapted to the process we are discussing. That is, the process of creating a personal assistant, the process of creating a full-fledged digital copy of a person, and, essentially, digital immortality and everything related to it. And I'll probably ask the last question. The question is, what do you personally expect from the coming year? As a person, how do you think? What kind of world will we live in? When will all this happen? We're not talking about extremes, political difficulties, or some kind of World War III. Let's imagine none of that happens, but what will the world be like?
That's an interesting question. I imagine the coming year in a much more positive and optimistic light. It's a kind of synergy, a harmonious and meaningful connection between our human intelligence and consciousness and artificial intelligence. I see many opportunities here for freeing up valuable and significant time for a large number of people. And I truly believe that this freed up time can be directed toward creating things that people are genuinely interested in and passionate about. Not just moving toward mere survival, but actually creating and making new and exciting things. And I believe that the further we go, the more people will engage in creativity, in part because it will become easier, more accessible, and more inviting for everyone. Almost everyone will have the opportunity to create their own services and applications tailored to their specific and individual needs. And this in turn opens up great and exciting possibilities for everyone.
I think I agree with you here, and I want to emphasize that point. The question that naturally arises from our discussion is, will we actually have enough time to create a world that is truly built upon such important and meaningful values? I think there's definitely a chance for us to do so, and it's a chance that we should not let slip away. And at the very least, we simply can't afford not to take that chance, because the stakes are just too high. This window of opportunity that we as a company have noticed and identified is still open for us, and it's up to us to make the most of it while we can. And in fact, bright and talented minds like your team allow us to jump right in and seize this opportunity with both hands. So I want to sincerely thank you for this meeting, for your time, and for your thoughtful contributions. I think our audience, if they enjoyed it, and I truly believe they did, should leave some interesting, thoughtful, and constructive comments and suggestions under the video. First, it helps us spread our information and reach more people who might benefit from it. Second, it's just genuinely nice to read your feedback at the very least, and it helps us improve. Ask questions in the comments, in the chats, or wherever you feel comfortable. Share this video with your friends, colleagues, and anyone who might find it useful, because we've discussed some really interesting and important things here today. We've also talked about some intriguing and innovative business models, so it's valuable and important for us to know your opinion and hear your perspective. And I think we'd be very interested to read about some real-world cases, how you see the use of these technologies, or what you need and want to see on such a platform. I sincerely ask you, please write in the comments what you want to see on this platform, or what case you'd like to implement, what experience you want to digitize, and what result you want to achieve. I think we could even hold a contest for the best idea or the best comment, and maybe it will really be valuable for everyone involved, because we've repeatedly received such cool and creative cases from our audience, which we then implemented in our products, making them better for everyone. I think this will be useful for everyone, not just us. So write to us in the chats, to technical support, in the comments under this video, or even by email if you prefer, and the best ones will receive an interesting reward from us as a token of our appreciation. Maybe some branded gift, like a t-shirt like Alexis, or something else to reward you for your great idea and your engagement. Thank you. Thank you to everyone who was with us today, who listened, who participated, and who contributed. Thank you so much. All the best to you, and we look forward to hearing from you soon.
See you again next time, everyone.